Right, hello. Welcome back to another Warhammer Warden and The Paunch DLC look-see. I did say on the overview video that I will do something a bit more in-depth about each of the new factions, so we're having a look at a quick look here at the start of Tor Yvresse on the Vortex campaign, just to give you an idea of how Eltharion's start position looks here. As you can see, Tor Yvresse on the Vortex campaign has a little bit more space. Obviously the map isn't quite as squished as it is in Mortal Empires. He starts right up here in the top right of the map, giving him a fairly safe start point. Some interesting expansion options once he's secured his immediate surroundings and can start moving proper. As you can see, Grom will arrive in 150 turns, and it's up to you to complete certain missions to prepare for his arrival and then engage him in the final battle. Grom will obviously arrive here on the shores of Ulthuan, and it will be up to Eltharion to upgrade Athel Tamara and basically be able to cover the lands in the mists of Tor Yvresse, so he can protect Ulthuan and get his revenge on Grom. So yes, this is the start point here, because I know some people were mentioning that obviously the start point is a little bit different in Mortal Empires, which it is compared, which we'll see in a second. I've got a bit of a footage of the old Mortal Empires campaign. I personally prefer Mortal Empires over the Vortex campaign, just because you've got more factions to encounter and all the races to play against, so I just personally find it a little bit more interesting. But if you are more of a Vortex fan, this is how his initial start point looks, obviously with the Athel Tamara interface there, which I'll look at in a second, amongst other things. So we'll hop over to that now, shall we? Before we go over to that Mortal Empires video, we have Emmerich's start point in the Vortex campaign. Now, he has a bit of a split one, which is different from his Mortal Empires start point, where he has control of the location of Kassaba, down in the Southlands, surrounded by numerous Khemri and vampiric forces, alongside numerous greenskins and some lizard men and the such, with the intent to gain way fragments. Also over here he does also have control of the lands of Caledor, Caledor's Repose, Vol's Anvil and Tor Sethai over on Ulthuan. So he's got a bit of a mixed bag. He's got more work ahead of him compared to, I guess, to Eltharion, who has a little bit more of a secure start up here on the right. Emmerich obviously has the same gameplay functionality, but a little bit more expanded here for his dragon hunting, because the map isn't quite as big, so he won't have to worry about moving around quite as far to encounter the different drakes that may appear around the map. So we'll load up one of the saves I've got for him in a minute to have a look at him a bit more in depth, but I know some people want to see the Vortex campaign start as well, so there you go for that. Now, looking more specifically at Athel Tamara, which you can access on the side of the screen. I showed that in the previous video, but on the basically the bottom right of the screen there, if we just go here, you can open up this menu. Now, I've already captured a goblin commander here. It's a bit finicky, as you can see with the mouse clicks, but you click there and you get several options. So you can indoctrinate a captured prisoner, which will release them back to their faction unharmed, which gives you their line of sight on the campaign map, so it basically allows you to spy on them. You steal 5% of their character's faction treasury, you gain influence per turn, and you get extra supply for doing this. Supplies are marked here, and every single structure within Athel Tamara requires them. So if we have a look here, this is the Ruined Mistwalker command post. If we were to upgrade it to rank 1, it unlocks the Mistwalker's build chain, allowing the recruitment of Mistwalker units in the local region, and increases Ladriel's Blessing, which is the Mists of Yvresse. At level 2, it would also increase the rank of all those Mistwalker units and further increases the Blessing. The Training Grounds, which would also unlock one of the units, the Athel Tamara Faith Bearers, and again increases the Mist and increases the number of them. So you only get limited numbers, so it's worth going for all of them. So as you see, Archery unlocks the Skyhawks, Sentinels of Astaril, Spire Guard of Tor Yvresse. So have a look at these units in a minute. And Ladriel's Blessing, and further increasing the capacity for those units. That one is a general units upgrade, and then again further, then you have the Shrine to Loak here, or Lock, I don't know how it's pronounced for the Hiles. It's extra influence gain per turn, so as you can see, he can get quite effective as he goes on. As this mist expands further and further the Waystone network, and eventually you get the interrogation chamber. Yes. Interrogation is something you can't initially do, so I can't actually see what the benefits are, but as far as I'm aware, they grant you a different set of rewards. Basically, execution will kill the character, so in this case it would kill this goblin, but if it was one of the legendary lords, it just wounds them. You gain experience specifically for Eltharion, a chunk of influence for next turn, and you gain 3 supply. And every building, I believe, requires it might be 3 or 5 supply. You know what? Let's just execute this goblin. There we go. We got 3, and that is not enough to upgrade. So yeah. So I think you need 5. You can see here that you gain supplies from Mistwalker candidates, indoctrinated prisoners, green-skinned settlements destroyed, completing objectives, executing prisoners. You will lose them, obviously, for buying Atheltamara upgrades. And then Shifty Gutstabber has been gut-stabbed, and thus is no longer in the match. So yeah, that's just a basic look there at the... Well, I say basic. There's not really much more to go with. This is obviously Eltharion's start point in the Mortal Empires campaign, so he has both Grunty Mingle, which is a fantastic name for a location. Alright, Grunty Mingle. He's got this location here on the coast of the Badlands, with the specific goal of going after old Grom here. That's the narrative. So instead of starting in Massive Orcal, as when you play as Grom, he will appear over in this part of over by the Misty Mountains, Spike Peak, Cradtom and such. So basically his goal is to drive right across the Badlands, smacking orcs as he goes along to try and get rid of Grom. That is, I believe, his short campaign victory. So basically maintain a bunch of the High Elf and Badlands locations, and destroy the Broken Axe tribe, and also have 3 of the following unit types in your army, and that's your short campaign victory. Obviously, your long campaign victory is much more involved. Obviously, make sure that you control a whole bunch of locations, destroy the Broken Axe, Nagaron, and Gringor's Ard Boys, because why not? And have more of those units, and control a bunch of provinces via allies or via conquest. So yeah. And yeah, you can see that he also has control of Tor Yvresse over yonder, which has the what are these called again? Skullcrag greenskins instead of Grom on the eastern coast here. That you can obviously, they're your initial enemies to start fighting against. A quick way of building up supplies. You also start with your own army over here, who can't be clicked for some reason because of the user interface. Go on, there we go. With the new Archmage hero character here. She has access pretty much to every Wind of Magic type in the game, so you can really specialise all of them. Lorna here starts with the Archmage of Beasts, but yeah, you can pretty much train any Archmage once you unlock them for pretty much every single realm of magic. If we have a look at the building chain, if you want to see how some of the new units are recruited, so Silvering Guard there is one of the new units, which are recruited from the War Hall, so a pretty straightforward progression tree there. If we've got the Silver Helms, let's see, the White Lions come here from the Grove building now, alongside the White Lions of Trace and the Great Eagle. The Lion Chariot is available from the Ithilmar Smith. So once you start going down the siege route with the bolt thrower, that's when you'll get the chariots and the War Lion Chariot. Obviously the Arcane Phoenix is found within the Sanctuary of Asurion now, so there's 2 units to recruit for there, not just the Phoenix Guard, which is the natural progression there from the Shrine of Asurion tech tree. Obviously all the mages, archmages now that can be recruited to the different types of spells. The dragons and handmaiden and such. I believe that's the 5. Yeah, that's the 5 new units that are available Oh yeah, there's Rangers as well, which have basically become like a new basic unit, going alongside Archers and Spearmen, essentially. Spearmans! Yep, Archers of Light Armour and Rangers are available immediately from the Militia Camp, and are very generic basic unit, anti-infantry, Forest Strider with Dodge. But we'll have a look at those properly in a minute, so you can see the nice little character models and all the animations and stuff. It's very pretty. By comparison, Emmerich here, I was a little bit more balls deep into a campaign play of him. So he starts down here in Mortal Empires on the bottom right of the, the map after its expansion with the Badlands rework that's happened in the new patch, giving him access here to the Dragon Isles alongside the Plain of Bones and Old Noblar country, which shows a nice little nod there to the hopefully future Ogre Kingdoms being added in a future update. But yes, he starts down here at the Fortress of Vorag, which is his base of operations in the region. He has access to the unique building chain there of the Tower of Bloody Tooth, which does give a nice amount of income and reduction to a construction. So it does have that vampiric corruption problem, though. It does give you a Sun Dragon and 2 white lions as garrison for the place, so it's not too bad. It's not a bad trade-off. He actually starts at war with the local dwarves here, the clan Helheim, though you can get a peace treaty with them relatively quickly once you've secured the province of Ash Ridge Mountain, Darkhold and Fortress of Vorag. Other than that, Emmerich has quite a few options available to him. He can engage the orcs to the west and northwest. He's got the vampires over here. Although both of these locations start off as ruins, you can later on attack them. If you so wish, you can start heading into the southeast to engage the Haggreif Dark Elves, who initially start at war with a Lizardman tribe down here, though they don't last that long. Then you've also got over here to the east, where you have the goblins of the Red Cloud tribe, and there's also Clan Eshin to deal with. So Emmerich's got no shortage of enemies to initially deal with. Now Emmerich himself, who I've got holed up in the town of Pigbarter, fantastic location, as you can see here, is a Caledorian knight with the trait Dragonkin, which basically increases his movement range and makes him immune to mountain and desert attrition, and has minus 25% upkeep for dragons and dragon princes. It's very high ranked units there, but he just makes them cheaper. Also, he has a beard weaver at the moment. Anyway, his skills include the Armour of Caledor unique item, which grants him his increased Aura of Leadership, extra ward save for 10%, increased armour, and reduced vigor loss, and the ability Armour of Caledor, which restores 1,000 hit points for himself, plus 100% vigor, and minus 120 ability recharge in seconds, but it means he can't move while he's using it. He also has the Mount Mauterius, or Mauterarius. Basically, it's an elven steed that has some extra benefits for him. It does say when he's on foot, he will use a halberd rather than a lance. He does already start equipped with his Star Lance, which we can have a look at here. The Star Lance gives him an extra 15% speed, increased damage versus large creatures plus 10, 5% charge bonus for his army, and the Star Lance effect, which is fire damage, 25% armor piercing weapon damage, plus 20% charge speed, and 50% charge bonus. And he's imbued with Flammable, which is in 20 seconds, plus 22% weakness to fire damage. He starts with that equipment. I'm assuming, though, in the Vortex campaign, he, however, probably has to work for those items. He's essentially a good anti-monster unit, which makes sense because he's a dragon tamer. Later on, at rank 14, he also gains access to his dragon mount, Minaithnir, which looks pretty cool. He has this unique skill tree of Caledor Incumbent, which increases his influence per turn and unlocks recruitment of nobles for all provinces and extra hero capacity of plus 3 for nobles. He also gets Vol's Armaments, which gives him magic resistance 15%, research rate increase of 10%, and extra 15 armor for his army. He has Dragon Heart, terrible film, plus 7 melee attack, fire resistance 35% for all units in his army, and plus 5% plus 5 leadership for his army. Astride the battlefield, extra 15% speed for his cavalry, 15 cavalry charge bonus, and plus 2 ranks for cavalry recruits, and Ancient Pride, which reduces his vigor loss reduction for Dragon Prince and Dragon units, gives him 10% physical resistance for Dragon Prince and Dragon units, and increases the melee defense for the same. Other than that, obviously he gets Ashen Fields, weakness to fire damage, minus 20% for all units, local enemy armies, and increases weapon strength. His dedication to Vol, which again further enhances Dragon Princes and reduces their upkeep, including a small buff to industry building output and extra 5 armor. And finally, Blazing Lance and Dragon Pact. Blazing Lance giving him charge bonus and attacks causing flammable effect, reducing fire resistance. And finally, Dragon Pact, which is a nice bonus with Dragon Lance. Blazing Lance, which will basically fire exploding bolts at the ground that cause fire damage and magical damage. So yes, he is most definitely focused around being a straight up in your face fighter. He also has the Dragon Horn unique ability, which will give entire map wide for all allies in range. Don't know why it says that, because it's map wide. Plus 24 melee attack and can cause fear to enemy units when they hear the horn being blown. Is very useful in the early game. It's great against Skaven, for instance, since they attack in such large numbers. If you use it at the right time, you can cause numerous units to have a huge morale drop, or cause Skaven slaves and such, or any unit that's in a bit of a tough fight, to immediately flee, which could be quite useful. And the bonus to your own units is obviously very useful, especially in the early part. His army also starts with a Sun Dragon and a unit of Dragon Princes and a White Lions of Trace. Other than that, though, it can be a bit of an uphill struggle with Emmerich, but I do like his playstyle. At the top here you also have the number of turns until a dragon encounter, which this slowly increases. First it's 10, then after the initial encounter it's 15, then it goes to 20 and so on. So the longer you take, the rarer. It's supposed to represent the rarity and scarcity of these majestic creatures as time passes, as the old world starts to fall towards, obviously, the end times. So yes, if you defeat those dragons, you will gain access to them as a Regiment of Renown units. I don't think you can see them on the list here, though. No, I think you have to wait until they're... Yeah, you have to wait till you actually defeat them. But they do appear on here. So I was messing around in another campaign, which I deleted accidentally because I'm an idiot. But yeah, I did have one of the dragons unlocked on that campaign. I had to restart it though because I ended up in a really stupid position. So if we open up the skill tree here for Eltharion, you can see that he has quite a few options available to him from his Storm of Blades, Sword Player and Apotheosis skill trees, among the usual Inspiring Presence and Root Marcher. This is because of his hybrid character setup, being a sword, spear and high magic user. He is more of a flexible jack-of-all-trades character that focuses more on being able to switch roles as necessary on the battlefield, as opposed to Tyrion and Teclis, who are much more focused in either magic use or hand-to-hand combat. As such, he has a number of innate benefits. He has missile resistance 15%, resilience to immune to the attrition of the Mist of Yvresse, which is one of the Athel Tamara abilities. He has Encourage, he can hide in forests. He has Grim Discipline, Constant Augment, which grants some extra melee defense and melee attack, only active when his hit points, disabled if his hit points drop below 25%. He has Mistwalker's Barrage as a passive ability. Basically, when he is engaged in combat with an enemy unit, non-friendly fire arrows will rain around him doing damage. It's very good when you throw him into combat against a weak unit of infantry. He also has, obviously, his Apotheosis spell and his Soul Quench ability, which will allow him to do magic damage to an enemy unit. So his unique equipment includes the Talisman of Hoeth, which will enable him to use advanced high magic spells with a lower miscast chance, increasing his Winds of Magic reserve and reducing the magic cost for the Hand of Glory spell, which is obviously down here. He has the Helm of Yvresse, unlockable, which grants public order bonuses for local province, increased armor, increased leadership for his army, and the Helm of Yvresse ability, which essentially makes a unit that he targets immune to psychological effects. They're unbreakable and they will not die while the spell is active. He also has the Fang Sword of Eltharion, which grants him increased speed, bonus against infantry, reduces an enemy holdout time for sieges, and grants him the Fang Sword of Eltharion ability, which increases his armor piercing damage by 25% and gives him an extra 44% physical resistance. He also has access to the Barded Ithelbar Steed as his first unlockable mount at rank 8, and eventually at rank 14 he'll be able to unlock Stormwing, his unique griffin mount, which you see in the trailer. It's very pretty. I also showed it off in the previous video. Going further along his tree, he gets Break Upon the Walls, Wall Warden, which will increase his armor for all units when defending in his army, reduces construction costs in all provinces, and construction time -2 for wall and garrison buildings. He can basically cause slight public order disturbances in enemy provinces, and will also further increase his movement range when you get Unyielding March. Later on he gets Grim Discipline, which is a passive ability which will replace his Martial Mastery and Martial Prowess, and also give him Expert Charge Defense for his entire army. And Dedicated to Ladriel, which, as we mentioned, was one of the rights that changed, rather than having one of the previous more generic High Elf ones. His Mist of Yvresse ability is enhanced by the right of Ladriel. This reduces the Vigor loss and increases weapon and missile strength for his Mistwalker units. Mistwalkers are the unique units that are recruitable from Athel Tamara. So as you can see, he's got quite a few options available to him, depending on how you want to build him, being a bit more well-rounded, or whether you want him to focus more or less in more defensive combat or offensive combat. So that's quite useful for Eltharion there. Right, so as promised, here are the units. So this is just a custom battle loaded up. So this is Emmerich here atop his dragon Menaithnir. As you can see, it's you know what, I've always been a fan of Dungeons and Dragons, like 3.5 edition designs for dragons, but the Warhammer ones look okay. They're pretty cool. This thing looks pretty pissed off. You can see Emmerich there awkwardly bouncing around on his throne on the back of the dragon. With his, you see the Star Lance there, perfectly still. Well trained for that. So that's him with his top level mount. But we'll have a look over here at the new units that have been added for the High Elves specifically. So if we bring the UI back in, just remove that so you can see Emmerich a bit better. So these are the Knights of Tor Gaval. Now if we bring up the toggle infantry, we can see here that they are armoured, armour piercing, and calls of terror. These are a unique unit of 4 that always come in this configuration. They are basically an accompaniment to Eltharion himself when he's on the back of Stormwing. They are a flying shock cavalry unit as such, and yeah, they have missile resistance 25%, obviously good siege attacker, calls fear and terror, and can encourage nearby units. And you can see their stats there with the unit card for anyone who was interested in seeing the specific gubbins there. Next up we have the, that is not Eltharion, the Grimfly Monstrous Cavalry, that is a complete lie. It's the Arcane Phoenix. I don't know how it clicked him, he's over there. Anyway, the Arcane Phoenix, which as you can see is a armor-piercing specialist that has the Rebirth ability. Basically, if it dies, it has a chance of respawning on the field and causing a magical explosion when it does. It's attuned to magic, so its magic attacks become stronger when the wind's magic goes full gale, and obviously it's airborne, it can do a special ability. Yes, which is this one here, the Ember Storm. This ability is more focused around the use of basically containing infantry units that may be walking under it. Basically, once it's used, it causes a fair amount of damage in a vortex area for 11 seconds. Pretty useful. Other than that, obviously it has physical and fire resistance, 70% fire resistance in fact, physical at 20%, causes fear and terror. It's attuned to magic as mentioned above, fiery rebirth there, which you can see the stats for. Disabled if its hit points are greater than 10%. Basically, when it dies, it has a chance to immediately re-erupt from the ground and continue the fight. And Ember Storm, which we already look at. So these are the Silvering Guard. This is one of the units that are specifically new to all High Elf factions. They are a mid-tier spear unit with enchanted armor. To make them a bit more effective in the mid-tier gameplay, armored and shielded, anti-large with charge against all. As you can see, martial prowess there, flying off them. It's a constant augment, so gives them +2 melee attack, +12 melee defense, and is disabled if their hit points drop below 50%. They also can hide in forests have expert charge defense and magic resistance of 30%. They look pretty cool, don't they? I do like the shield designs on a lot of the high elf gear. Always been a fan of the high elf aesthetic, not so much the race themselves. So these are the War Lions of Trace. I don't know why it's saying Spireguard of Tor Yvresse, because it's off its tits, this thing. So they are an armor-piercing anti-infantry unit with Lion Pelt, which obviously provides some certain benefits. They also have Strider, so they ignore combat penalties by different terrain. Yeah, the Lion Pelts, as it describes here, it provides protection against regular and magical missile attacks. Basically, they're more resistant to arrows that are fired at them. They're pretty good. You don't want to charge these straight into a unit of infantry, usually because they will get messed up pretty quick. But they are fantastic at flanking and hitting enemies from the side or rear. They're very fast and quite useful in that kind of field. Not as effective as cavalry, but still pretty fun to use. White Lions look ace as well. They're very cool. These are the Rangers, the new basic unit that can be recruited, as we saw earlier, and in the militia camp. They look pretty impressive. Dual sword infantry. It says they're anti-infantry. They're okay, but you wouldn't put them up against mid-tier units or higher, unless they've got some ranks in them and some nasty benefit from certain campaign buffs and the such. Otherwise, they are going to die fairly quickly. They do have dodge and Forest Strider, so they're good at being able to use the terrain to their advantage. They are woodsmen, they can pass through trees, and they have 20% physical resistance, so they're slightly more resistant to enemy attacks. But as I said, really good in the early stages. If you can keep them alive and rank them up, then you're okay. Otherwise, keep them out of later fights. Lion Chariots are another unit that's available for all the high elf factions. I should mention that the White Lions here are also for all high elf factions, as is the Chariot, as it should be. I was disappointed that this wasn't included initially. You can see that the you know one of the things we're going to do is start the battle and just pause. So you can see here that the Lion Chariots of Trace are armoured, armour-piercing, anti-infantry, again with Lion Pelts, obviously. Again, these are good in flank or just straight up charging right into an enemy unit. They can do a lot of damage very quickly. They are also pretty cool looking. I mean, a Lion Chariot. You can't go wrong. Can't go wrong, folks. Alright, let's see. What else do we have here? I believe we may have looked at all of the freebie ones. Yeah, this is... So we get into some of the units here that are specific to Athel Tamara when you unlock them. So this is the Spire Guard of Tor Yvresse. These are one of the Mistwalker units. They have heavy arrows for a start, so they actually have extra armor piercing capabilities. So as it says, they have stockpiled. They have a lot of ammunition. They can keep firing for a long time. They are anti-large because they are a hybrid spear bow infantry unit. You can see the spears there on their backs. They have charge defense against pretty much everything. Doesn't matter what it is. They will have a fairly decent protection against it, and they are unbreakable. These are one of the best units available to Eltharion during a campaign, and for good reason. He has a few decent hybrid units. We also have the Skyhawks, which are another hybrid infantry unit that also use bows, and I believe it's swords. I think it is. You can't really see them, but I believe it's sword and bow. Penetrating projectiles, again, they can go through heavier armor. They're anti-infantry with a stalk trait, but they are weak against armor, which is strange because they have penetrating projectiles, so presumably the weakness there is to do with engaging in hand-to-hand combat. They can fire on the move like Wood Elves, so pretty useful in that regard, and they have Vanguard deployment, so if you have a couple of these units, once you upgrade certain parts of Athel Tamara, you'll be able to use these in the early part of the battle and really soften up the enemy. We got it. This is Rangers. Oh, we clicked the wrong one here. Sentinels of Astaril, another hybrid ranged spear and shield equipped unit instead. They have Shield Breaker. Their attacks can significantly weaken a target's chance of blocking missile attacks. They have good range and charge defense against large foes, but they have a low rate of fire. That's their apparent drawback. It doesn't really matter. All of these Athel Tamara units are really good. and completely justify focusing very heavily on killing orcs and upgrading that location, because it's very effective. We also have the Athel Tamara Faith Bearers, which are not one of the hybrid units, strangely enough for him. They are a Mr. Walker's sword infantry, so they're armoured and shielded and have frenzy, while their leadership is high. So basically, if you keep Eltharion near them, or the Knights of Torgaval, which are the other Mr. Walker unit unique to Athel Tamara, you will be able to keep these guys swinging like mad the whole time. As you can see, they're armed with fairly intricate armour and swords and shields there. I like the colour scheme on them, quite nice. So I believe that's all the units. We can have a look at Eltharion here on Stormwing. If we bring that up, it's Flying Monstrous Cavalry. There you can get a rather nice shot there of the mount. Did you see Eltharion there? Eltharion looking like he's straining to read the teletext screen there. Looks like he's having a bit of trouble seeing exactly what's going on his monitor. So he's obviously he's a spellcaster who's armor piercing, and causes terror with his numerous buffs: Encourage, Shield of Sapphire, Mr. Walker Barrage, Apotheosis, Hand of Glory spell, Soul Quench, Tempest, Arcane Unforging, and Fiery Convocation. Yeah, he is obviously one of the more powerful elven lords out there. So that was the new units. Said I'd have a look at them. I'm sure most people will just skip to this bit anyway. Yeah, pretty interesting. 10 whole new units for Eltharion, if you're playing specifically as him, or 5 new units for the High Elves. So it's a pretty good spread, to be honest. So much needed sort of diversification there. Some new tactical options available. And yeah, just overall, just a nice little buff to the High Elf faction in general. So I think that's where we'll wrap it up, to be honest. We've had a look at the units, we've had a look at Eltharion, we've had a look at Tor Yvresse, we've had a look at old Emmerich and him on his Dragon Mount. I suppose we can get a better look at him over here just while we're wrapping up. There we go. We see him a bit better now there, sat on the back of his favourite dragon. Yes, he's his favourite dragon. So yeah, it's kind of fun. Warden and The Paunch comes out on the 21st, and will be a very interesting upgrade. Obviously, next I'm going to have a look at the Orcs, Grom the Paunch, and Azag the Slaughterer. Just having a look at his new start position, as there's been a update for the Greenskins that covers a much wider arc of gameplay. So thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you have a good week. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.